Greetings, metaphysicians. This is episode 121, Go Where You Are Called. And where I was called is Bhutan. That is where this episode was recorded. And I share some downloads and insights about this lovely place and how it relates to our own intuition, our own guidance, and our own callings. Enjoy the episode.
You're listening to Let's Get Metaphysical. This podcast explores the spiritual and metaphysical world through the experiences and opinions of the host and those interviewed. It should not necessarily be seen as direct endorsement or personal advice to our listeners. We encourage you to use your own discernment, judgment, and intuition regarding anything you learn from this show.
Let's get meta.
Welcome to the Let's Get Metaphysical podcast. I am your host, Renata Maniaci, here to remind you that you are a spiritual being having a temporary human experience here on lovely planet Earth. Make the most of it. This is season 7, the never-ending season, otherwise known as Heaven on Earth. And this is episode 121, Go Where You Are Called. And I was called to Bhutan, and that is where I am currently recording this episode. People keep asking me, how did you hear about Bhutan? And I don't know. I don't remember. I know that I've wanted to come here for a while now, and I just am not sure, other than I feel like I was called here. And I want to talk about Bhutan and some of the amazing things that have been happening while I've been here, and some other things that have been dropping in along my travels as well. So let's jump right in, shall we? Are you ready? Let's get meta. Masters and angels, I request your guidance, presence, support, and love through this episode. I invoke the light of the divine within me. I am a clear and perfect channel. Light is my guide, highest possible good, and only good is allowed. Please help me to know the truth, speak the truth, become the truth, and be the truth. And please allow this episode to reach whoever needs to hear it. Thank you with gratitude and full faith. Bless creation. So here I am in Bhutan, and this country is so different from the other countries that I've been in recently. Obviously, every country has its own flavor, its own culture, its own norms, its own everything. It was just such a blissful experience landing in this country. I was smiling ear to ear. I flew here from Kathmandu and had a beautiful view of the Himalayas on the way in on that fairly short flight. Maybe it was an hour, hour and a half. And I just felt blissful from the moment I set foot on the ground after deplaning. The airport in Paro here is beautiful, and everything was just beautiful. I don't know how else to describe it. The energy is very unique. It's its own energy. It is, what is it? It's pure. It's clean. It is devoted. It is peaceful. It is serene. For those of you who don't know much about Bhutan, I'm not going to give like this whole history lesson or anything, but so few people, maybe more people now, but relatively few people have visited this country in relation to other countries in the world, and even in this area. This is a small country that is sandwiched in between the two countries with the largest populations in the world, China and India. And for some strange reason, some divine reason, some good karma, Bhutan has never been colonized. And it is, for all intents and purposes, completely Buddhist country. And they have somehow managed to maintain their own culture and take contemplative, specific, thought-out steps towards bringing in modern technologies and things that would further the country's economic growth, but maybe lead to something that wasn't the best for their people. This is a kingdom that currently has its 5th king, and this current king's father was the king before him, and his father the king before him, and so on since the first king. And as far as I can tell, everyone in the country absolutely loves all of their kings and holds them in very high esteem. And as far as I can tell as well, these kings have made some incredibly enlightened decisions for this country and its people. And I'm not, again, going to go into, this isn't a history lesson on Bhutan, but I'm trying to set the stage a little bit so you can feel into a little bit where I'm feeling into right now. The king before this current king abdicated the throne so that he could pass it on to his son, which is something that has never maybe been done before in the history of the world, that a living king would give up power and say, okay, I've had enough, and here, son, you can take the throne now. At the same time, also putting in place a democratically elected government system. And this all happened about maybe 15 years ago or so, 15, 20 years ago. Let's just say there's some very interesting things about this country that are absent in any other place that I know about. That isn't to say they don't exist elsewhere, but I don't know about them. The 4th king also famously said in an interview that he was more interested in his country's gross domestic happiness than the gross domestic product or gross national product. So in other words, he was more interested in his people being happy than in making money for his country or selling out his country's natural resources in favor of money instead of in favor for what's good for his people. And by all regards, the current king, king number 5, is very similar in this respect. So that's kind of a little snapshot of what we're looking at here. There are no beggars. There are no homeless. There is not a sense of desperation. You know, when you're traveling someplace and you go into a store and there's a sense of desperation that somebody wants you to buy something. There isn't that here. That's just absent. And the environment, the nature is just breathtaking. It's pristine. There's not garbage thrown around like there is in other countries in the surrounding areas here. It's an entirely different feel. Why am I going on and on about this? It surprised me. I didn't know what to expect. I knew I was being called here for a reason. I was also being called to Nepal and to go to India again. And it now looks like I will be heading for Sri Lanka. I've also never been there. I guess I am tickled and so pleased that a country like this can exist in a world like this. And I would love to come back and explore it more and spend more time here, which is not necessarily the easiest thing to do either. It costs money for a foreigner to spend time in Bhutan each day. There's a tourist tax, and they do not let people just come and move here from anywhere. The 99%, if not more, I don't know the exact numbers on this, but the people who live here are 99% or more Bhutanese. So that's also very interesting because so many of the surrounding countries have so many other immigrants and refugees and expats even. So that was maybe a bit verbose for setting the stage for Bhutan, but there's been some really wonderful things that have happened for me, I guess, or in my own kind of inner sanctum since I've been here. I remember the first time that I went to Senegal in West Africa, and I lived there for a study abroad program for the first time. The first time I lived there, and then I went back later. And I remember feeling like in Senegal, anything can happen. Like there was this magic there that I felt like if you wanted to do something or meet somebody or anything, I just felt like it was possible. And I don't quite know why that is, but haven't felt that feeling until being here too. That feeling came back like anything is possible here. For some reason, there's that magic here too. For example, I was driving from Thimphu to Punakha, and we stopped at two different places. And one of the places we stopped, we ran into the chairperson of their parliament, which is fairly equivalent to the Speaker of the House in United States Congress. And yes, it's a much smaller country than the United States by all dimensions. There are under 1 million Bhutanese. I believe it's 700,000 something Bhutanese. But still, that happened. And then not an hour later, we were visiting a nunnery, and the nuns happened to be doing a beautiful ceremony for one of the queen mothers, actually, I think two of the queen mothers, because their father had passed away a few years ago, and this was a ceremony for him. And they were both there. And what do I mean by queen mother? I mean the current king's mothers. So the current king, king number 5, has a wife and now I believe 2 children. His father married 4 sisters who are all the queen mothers, and 2 of them happened to be at this nunnery at this exact same time that I went to visit it, and this beautiful ceremony was going on. Again, yes, I know, small country and everything, but the timing and the just magic of it. And as all of you know, I play my angelic processes wherever I go, location repair, spirit repair, just to help clean and cleanse and update and upgrade the areas, I guess you could say. And so just coming into contact with these people who help to rule is maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, but help to maintain this country. It just felt magical. So where am I going with this? Let's see. Let's see if I can pull some threads together for everyone. But I think the main idea is that we all get called to go places, whether they're domestic or international, or even within your own town, your own state. And there's a reason for that. And I think that one of the things that struck me also while being here is my guide one day just kind of unironically, completely just naturally and normally said, well, you're here not only because you felt some kind of calling to come to Bhutan, but Bhutan was also calling to you. And it's part of your life path. It's part of your karma to be here. And it's also part of our karma that we get to meet and interact in this lifetime, even though we probably have before. And there's something that brings us together for this moment for whatever reasons. And it was just such a natural, nonchalant, obvious statement, but such a deep, profound one. And it was a really beautiful thing to think about, that not only did I have a calling to go to Bhutan, but Bhutan was also calling me at the same time. And just thinking about it that way, because I've never thought about it that way. I've never thought, oh, a place wants me to go there too. I've only thought, oh, maybe I want to go to a place, or I have this desire or this thought or this calling to go to a place. But maybe you're being called as well. And I think what he was trying to get across was you are being called. And it has more to do with your life path and your karmic duties than maybe, I will say, I realized, and maybe more than folks where I'm from realize. But here it was just such a natural, obvious thing to say, but also very meaningful and very honest. And I really, I'm still thinking about that. And then it makes me think back to Nepal and where I went in India, and when I go back to India, and when I go to Sri Lanka and all these other places that I will go and have been, and what does that mean? And I know the last few episodes I've been having this kind of theme of both noticing the surrender in these places to a larger extent, and also being able to go with the flow more because there's less resistance, there's less need to control, there's less ability to control. And so there's been this theme, and that continues here as well. This going with the flow, this surrendering, and now this just normal everyday talk of karma. And I think, as I've said before, a lot of people in the West see karma as a bad thing. Like, we only usually bring it up when we're commenting on how it will get you in the end or something like this. And that is just not the case at all here. That's not how I feel about karma, but it's also just not the case here. It's ingrained. Everyone not only believes in karma, but knows it to be true. It's not even to be true, just knows that it is, because it's not like people question it. And so when something happens, it's accepted. It's not fought against. It's not resisted. And we have so much resistance in the West that I'm noticing more and more not being there at this moment. And that absence of resistance, that absence of trying to control, that invitation to just be and to accept what comes along, it gives a certain amount of openness. It helps to open your spirit. It helps to open your being. It helps to open your soul to all of these possibilities that you didn't even know existed. It wasn't even known that these possibilities could be an option. And so I guess one of my asks, or one of my concepts for this episode, is, where are you being called? Where are you being called? Or maybe it's, what are you being called to do? But that one is tricky, because I feel like in the West we need to do. And we're, the old saying where people say we're not human doings, we're human beings, and we need to learn how to be more. And this, again, is not necessarily a far off travels, far away places, distant destinations type of thought process or pondering. This is, where are you being called, and can you go there? Because there's a reason why we're called into certain places. I'm sure that all of you listening have had this experience before, where you've been called somewhere. And again, this could be a different country, or this could be to go into a bookstore that you were passing where a book fell off the shelf and that book changed your life. So on a more broad level, this is about listening to your guidance. This is about starting to, or continuing to, in many of our cases, follow the twinkle lights in whatever and however, whatever form they appear. Our desires, our thoughts, our callings come from somewhere. And if you're clear, and your mind is clear, and your body is clear, and your spirit is clear, you are more likely to be called by your soul, your guides, the light, God, in general, these things, beings, yourself that is positive and of the light. And if you are clouded, if your mind is clouded, your body is clouded, your spirit is clouded due to whatever. I've done enough episodes, I'm sure you maybe have heard them, on what could be clouding your mind, body, and spirit. If you are clouded, you are more likely to heed the more negative beings, thoughts, and influences that may be telling you to do X, Y, Z, or calling you to do XYZ or be in XYZ. So just another plug for being as clear as you possibly can be so that you can hear, see, feel, know where you are being called to go, what you are being called to do. And it's been my experience that practice makes perfect. If you are feeling called to go someplace and you go there, you get rewarded by being able to hear more, understand more, be more aware, have more awareness of what you're doing there and maybe what that place is doing for you or what you're doing for that place or what you brought along with you that is helping that place. You get this thought to call a friend and you call that friend and maybe you don't know why, but maybe the friend knows why, or maybe you understand like, oh, wow, I needed to say that, or I needed to hear this, or I needed to understand that this happened. And then because you followed that twinkle light, you get more and you start to trust yourself. You start to trust your knowings. You start to trust your soul. You start to trust the benevolent magic that is all around you. Magic's one word. Energy is another word. Beings are another word. Whatever word or words work for you is great. But going where you're called, taking those steps, it's having faith, which we've been talking about recently on the podcast too. And every time you take a step towards something that shows that you have faith in the information you're getting, you deserve more. You get more, you receive more, you get more awareness. But please, stay clear because there are negative influences. And just look around the world. So many people follow the negative influences. We're certainly feeling this now on the planet, aren't we? I'm a firm believer that all of this is happening for a reason, that we're bringing all of the trash and the garbage and the negativity and everything to the surface so that we can at last see it instead of it being hidden or behind the veil, so to speak, for so long. We're starting to see what's actually happening, how the world has actually been run and by whom. And the talk about control, the need for the powers that be to control all of our movements, our actions, what we put in our bodies, what we learn, what we see, what we hear, what we think. I'm an optimist. I think that's all happening for a reason. And I think we are all, as a planet, going to overcome this difficult moment. This moment that feels more like World War III every day on some level. It's a different kind of war. It's a war for our minds. And I talked about this, when was that? 2020? 2 years ago? I think right when I started doing solo episodes. It's still happening. It's just more obvious now. Hopefully it's more obvious to everyone. And all of this has to do with going where you're called. You get to listen to yourself. You get to become clear enough to hear what your own intuition, your own guidance, your own soul is saying to you. And that is how we are going to get through this. That is how we're going to raise our level of consciousness. That's how we're going to move forward through negativity, through ignorance, through hate, through war, into the next iteration and transformation of this planet. I believe that this will happen. And one of the things that you can do is to go where you're called. So I send you all love and blessings from beautiful Bhutan. And I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you for sticking with me on this journey. Stay positive, stay safe, and stay meta.
The Let's Get Metaphysical podcast is an Up and Awaken production and is produced and hosted by Renata Maniaci. Our intention is to raise the vibration of the planet by sharing, validating, and normalizing spiritual and metaphysical experiences. If you are ready to raise your vibration, you might enjoy our free Let's Get Meta Master Clearing. To receive the Master Clearing or to learn more about the podcast, visit letsgetmeta.com. We like to share metaphysical stories and answer spiritual questions on the podcast. If you have a metaphysical experience you would like to share or have a spiritual question you would like to have answered, please send an email to info@letsgetmeta.com. The Let's Get Meta podcast is inspired by angels and supported by angels. If you would like to be an angel donor to the podcast, visit patreon.com/letsgetmeta. Thank you for listening. Stay meta.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.